Okay, girls, welcome to the first class of this summer on the topic of Midrashim on the Parasha. I want to thank the SCA. As you see here, this is an SCA class, usually in Hathaway Synagogue. Maybe at some point this summer that can work out. For now, we're on Zoom. So thank you for joining us. And we're going to look at the Midrash on the Parasha. Now, what's interesting is that when I taught this topic on Monday to my women's class, I actually didn't realize that it's a double Parasha. So while in my class on Monday, I actually spoke about Perashat Chukat, tonight we're going to look at a bunch of Midrashim on Bilam. Okay? We're going to focus our lesson on Bilam. I hope you find it interesting. As I researched some Midrashim on Bilam, I found a lot of Midrashim on Bilam ben Beor from the 6th Parasha. Before we even touch that, before we even get to the Midrashim on Bilam, girls, I want to give you a nice introduction from the Rambam on Midrashim. Now, we're not going to read the entire introduction. That would take up a lot of time. I will share this source sheet with you and feel free to go through it. But let's go through certain parts of this Rambam about Midrashim. Okay, girls, any of you that know me and know how I teach Torah, you might know that often, or most of the time, I'm teaching Torah according to the Perashat, according to the more basic explanation, the simple accepted explanation of the Pesukim. Girls, what is Midrash? Anyone know what's Midrash? When we say Midrashim on the Parasha, what does that mean? Anybody? Come on. Some of you learned Midrashim in the past couple of years. Some of you are allowed to talk. But again, what's a Midrash? You can just answer. You just answer. What's a Midrash? Unmute yourself.
Is it other commentators that basically they go into the Perashat and they find things that they have, that they think different things about, and then they take things that they saw and they try to find a deeper meaning to it?
Okay, good. You just said two different things, Barbara. Let me just explain and clarify. You first spoke about Parshanim, not Midrashim, which are commentators who comment on the Pesukim. And then you spoke later about the deeper explanation, which are Midrashim, right? You have different Parshanim. Some are more like the Perashat, and some are more like the Midrash, which we'll call Derash. You know what the word Lidrosh means? Lidrosh means to like seek out, to dig in, right? I'm digging deeper underneath the text, and I'm trying to find out certain things about the Pesukim. And the Rambam is very clear about Midrashim. He says that when it comes to Midrashim, there are three groups of people. Okay, look here at the source sheet in front of you. Harishona, I have the Hebrew on the right, the English on the left. The first group of people, Harishona, Vehu rov ma shera'iti v'ashera'iti haburav u'ma sheshamati alav. That's like the largest group that I know of, that Rambam says. Hem ma'aminim otam al pashtam ve'en sovrim bahem perush nistar b'shum panim. He says, good, Shelly, you back? He says that the first group that he knows of explains Midrashim according to the way they hear the Midrashim. So you hear Midrash about Paro, who used to go urinate by the Nile River, right? He went to go take the bathroom by the Nile River. Do I take that literally or not? He says most people, a huge group of people, take Midrashim literally. That whatever the Chachamim said in the Midrash, they meant that to the literal sense. So it's not just an explanation or an idea. It's that the Chachamim are actually saying that happened. Says the Rambam, that's the first group that he knows, and he says that they make the Hachamim look foolish. Because many times the Hachamim will write down a Midrash that's hard to comprehend. It's beyond, it's all fantasy. And then you make the Hachamim look silly. That's one group of people. What's the Kata Shiniyah? Does anyone want to read the Kata Shiniyah? Would anyone like to read what's on the screen? Kata Shiniyah.
I'll read it.
Go. Kata Shiniyah.
והכת השנייה הם רבים גם כן והם אותם שראו דברי החכמים או שמעום והבינו אותם כפי פשוטו וחשבו שלא כוונו חכמים בו זולתי מה שמורה עליו פשט הדבר והם באים לסכל אותם לגנותם ומוציאים דבר על Mash ein ba dava. Continue.
You can stop there. Very good. Excellent reading. Says the second group, look at the English. They are the ones that saw the words of the sages or heard them and understood them according to their simple meaning and thought that the sages did not intend them anything more than which is indicated. They said, yeah, the Midrashim are according to the way that we understand them. And they say, these Hachamim, they're silly. Why would they say that? They don't know anything. That's the second group. So the second group kind of makes fun of the Hachamim. Okay? Because they understand Midrashim literally, and they don't really understand the importance of the Midrash, and they make the Hachamim look stupid too. So both the first group and the second group are making Hazal look not like Hachamim. Third group. And I'm hoping this summer, through my class, that we belong to or will belong to the third group. Okay, does anyone else want to read? Be'akata Shelishit, the third group. Before we read our Midrashim tonight on Bil'am, it's important again to know what this third group is. This is what we aspire to. This is our goal, to belong to the third group. Anybody? Anyone want to read? For anyone that's coming in late, again, we're speaking about the different ways that people look at Midrashim. One group thinks that they're meant literally, but they explain it with they try to respect Hazal by explaining it literally, and it makes Hazal look silly because things that they said, if taken literally, make them look like they're telling fairy tales. Second group makes fun of Hazal. Here's the third group. והכת השלישית והם חי השם מעטים עד מאוד עד שאין ראוי לקרותם כת. They're such a small group that maybe you can't even call them a group. It's possible that maybe they're not even a group because they're so small. והם אותם בני אדם שנתפרד אצלם גדולת החכמים ז"ל. They understand how smart and wise the rabbis are. וטוב שכלם ממה שנמצא בכלל דבריהם מורים על עניינים אמיתיים ללמוד. They understand that what the rabbis are saying are very truthful. They're not literal, they're not real, quote unquote, right? These fantasy type of midrashim, they're not real, quote unquote, but they're true. Can anyone explain what I mean by that? What is that? What do I mean? They don't really happen, but they're still true. What does that mean? Whoever wants to answer, you can just unmute yourself.
I feel like maybe the difference between real and true is real means it actually happened, but true is something can be derived from it that actually happened.
Something could be derived from it. Don't worry about the actually happened. What could be derived from it is the life lesson and what the Hachamim are trying to teach out of that. Perfect, Shelly. Right? And he says that you should understand that because they're Hachamim, that they speak in derech mashal umlisa. Okay? They speak in parables. They're Hachamim, so they speak in riddles and parables. They speak in that way. You understand that? Which means that we have to dig deeper into their Midrashim to explain what exactly are they trying to say. What are the Hacham? What's deeper behind the Hachamim's Midrashim? So girls, let's start looking at the Midrashim on Bil'am. Okay? Are we good to look at Midrashim tonight on Bil'am and Balaq? Let's go to the first Midrash. Vayar Balaq ben Sipor. Okay, here you have Nikudot throughout. Maybe someone else would like to read without being worried about no Nikudot. Anyone want to read this?
Rabbi, in Flatbush we have Gemara. We don't need Nikudot.
Most of the Gemarot I see given out these days has Nikudot in it. But okay.
Not Rabbi Prague's. He specifically orders the one, it's Beli Nikudot.
Does anyone want to read, or would you like me to read? I really don't mind either way, but it's nicer to have participation. Any takers? Okay, I'll take it, I guess. Vayar Balaq ben Sipor. The reason why I chose this midrash first is because it's from a book, a sefer, a collection of midrashim called Midrash Rabbah. You look at the screen. This is a collection of midrashim, some of which were written earlier in the Gemara's time. Some were written as late as close to when Rashi lived. Okay? Vayar Balaq ben Sipor. Ze she'amar katuv. Hasur tamim pa'olo ki chod racham mishpat. The Torah says in Devarim that all the ways of God are just and perfect. Lo hiniach hakadosh baruch hu le'ovdei kochavim pithon pe le'atid lavo lomar she'atari haktanu. The first midrash on this Perasha in this book, the sefer called Midrash Rabbah, says God didn't want to allow the goyim to say that you distance us from you. Again, listen carefully to that. God is so just. He doesn't want to allow the goyim to say, you didn't give us the same opportunities as Am Yisrael. Okay? So in this first midrash we're reading tonight, it says, Me asa hakadosh baruch hu. What did God do? Keshem sheha'emid melachim v'chachamim unvi'im leYisrael. Just like he gave kings and wise people and prophets to Israel. Kach he'emid le'ovdei kochavim. So too did he give those, right, kings, wise people, and neviim to the goyim. He'emid Shlomo melech al Yisrael ve'al kol ha'aretz. He gave Bnei Yisrael Shlomo HaMelech. V'chen asa Nebuchadnezzar. And he also gave the goyim Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel. What's the contrast between the two? You could either look on or not look on. Girls, what's the contrast between Shlomo HaMelech and Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel? I feel like my connection only goes to West Allenhurst and it doesn't go past there. You know, like maybe the connection is better somehow, Oh, we have an Allenhurst here. Okay. But West Allenhurst, I guess, goes there. Yes, Shelly.
So I just feel bad because nobody's answering and I don't know, I'm paying attention, so I feel bad. But one created the Beit HaMikdash and one destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, and one used his, I guess you could say, powers or his leadership abilities to create some kind of unity within his nation, while the other kind of imperialized. And I feel like when you create such, when you have that kind of empire that has so many different components, there's no unity among the people.
So let's stick with the first one, because it happens to be with Shlomo. He also had that second problem you mentioned, but the first one was right on target. Shlomo builds the Beit HaMikdash, and Nebuchadnezzar destroys it. Camille, just to fill you in, we spoke in the beginning about Midrashim. How do you understand Midrashim? And we're just on the first Midrash. The first Midrash asks, how do we know that God is just? We know that God is just for him giving equal opportunity to Bnei Israel and to the Goyim. Bnei Israel have kings and wise people and Nevi'im. And now we're going to see that the Goyim also have kings and Chachamim and Nevi'im. He gave Bnei Israel Shlomo, who built the Beit HaMikdash, and he gave the Goyim Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. Natan David Osher velakach habayit lishmo. He gave David riches, and what did David want to do with all of that? What did he ask God to do? To build the Beit HaMikdash. Right, that's what he did with his wisdom. And what did he give? Menatan leHaman. Haman got Osher, got riches, velakach uma shelema letovha, and he wanted to destroy an entire nation, which is Am Yisrael. Kol gedula shenatlu Yisrael, any greatness that Bnei Yisrael got, at motzeh shenatlu ha'umot kayoseba. The Goyim also got that. And here's the example we want for this week's Perasha. He'emid Moshe Yisrael, Ubil'am le'ovdei kochavim. Bnei Yisrael get Moshe, the Goyim get Bil'am. And there's a Midrash, by the way, elsewhere that explains that the greatness of Bil'am, he was such a great Navi, that he had certain Navi qualities that were even better than Moshe Rabbeinu. Listen to that one. But look what happens. Camille, would you like to read this? Re'eh ma ben Nevi'ei Yisrael.
Sure, 1 second. Okay, where is it?
Re'eh, my pointer.
Re'eh ma ben Nevi'ei Yisrael leNevi'ei Ovdei Kochavim. Nevi'ei Yisrael mashirin et Yisrael min ha'averot shene'amad ve'atem ben Adam tzofe netatich.
Stop there. What do Bnei Yisrael, what do the Navi'im of our nation do with their Navwa?
They inform the people of their sins, kind of.
Right? They warn people about their sins. What does the one Navi that God gave to the Goyim, what does he do?
ונביא שעמד מן הגויים העמיד פרצה לעבד את הבריות מן העולם, ולא עוד אלא שכל...
Oh, stop this. Sorry. The Navi of the Goyim, העמיד פרצה. He gave advice for how to get Bnei Israel killed. Girls, who knows what advice did he give? What advice did he end up giving Balaq after the 3 things he said didn't work?
The women.
Right? To get involved with the women, to the whole Baal Peor situation with the Benot of Moab. Right? They do Zenut. Velo od, Camille, keep reading. Velo od.
ולא עוד אלא שכל הנביאים היו במידת רחמים על ישראל ועל עובדי כוכבים, שכן ירמיה עומד. ליבי למואב כחלילים יהמה, וכן יחזקאל בן אדם שא על צור קינה, וזה אכזרי עמד לעקור, ומה שלמה חינם על לא דבר.
Right, this Navi, our Navi'im at least feel bad for the other nations. This Navi is so stubborn and so, right, akhzari, right, and akhzar, someone who's akhzar,
Evil, no?
is cruel. This cruel person, Bil'am, got up and for no reason whatsoever wants to get rid of a whole nation. Lechach nichteva Parashat Bil'am. Therefore, and this is what the Midrash is addressing. Why was this Parasha written? Can anyone address to me? Why? Maybe you can answer for me. Why was this story of Bil'am written? Now, I notice some of you are a little bit camera shy. You could actually chat in the answer privately on the chat if you'd like to. But in your mind, think for a moment. Moshe Rabbeinu is not mentioned whatsoever in Parashat Balaq. Not sure if you know that or not. He's actually mentioned, but he's mentioned after Bilam's already gone. Right? In the Bilam story itself, the Gemara says that Moshe wrote the story, and that's why his name is missing. But why was it written? Why do we care? Bnei Yisrael didn't necessarily know about this story.
Wait, hold on.
Why was the story of Bilam written? What?
Rabbi, didn't Moshe write every story if he wrote?
Right, but the fact that his name was missing in this story, I think the Gemara needed to go out of its way to say that he wrote it. So you shouldn't think that he didn't. You got it? Now, why did he write, according to the Midrash, Lehodia lama silek HaKadosh Baruch Hu ruach HaKodesh me'ovdei kochavim? According to this Midrash, the reason why it was written was so that Goyim know why they lost Navwa. Shezeh amad mehem ure me'asa. To show the Goyim what was done so wrongly against Am Yisrael. Now that's not the Peshat. That's Midrash. That's a deep explanation of this story. To say that it was written for that reason is pretty deep. I can find many other reasons. It was written to show that God loves us. It was written to show that anyone who tries to hurt us, when God is with us and we're acting properly, we can be saved. This is not the reason I would think of. This is derasha. And on that point, I want to spend the rest of the class on a midrashim in the Gemara. Okay? There are a number of midrashim in the Gemara about Bilam. And I want to turn my attention to one of those types of midrashim that I spoke about in the beginning of the class in my introduction, that you might find, did that really happen? Find that for me. Right? People might think that's silly. People might think, that really happened. We, as part of the third group that Rambam mentions, we need to find deeper meaning, and I'm going to be asking your help tonight for this. Says the Mishnah. Look at Sanhedrin, Daf Chof He Amud Aleph. It's the Mishnah in the last perek of Sanhedrin. Does anyone want to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words you get to read of the part of the Mishnah in Sanhedrin? Not more than that.
I'll read it.
Okay, go, Deborah.
Okay.
Arba'a
ההדיוטות בלעם ודואג ואחיתופל וגזחי. בלעם.
Okay? He says, once again, those are the 6 words I want right now. The Mishnah is saying that these 4 prominent people do not have a helek be'olam haba. They do not have a portion in the world to come. Bil'am, doeg, achitofel, and gehazi. Let's focus, obviously, on Bil'am. And look what the Gemara does with his name, Midrash. Deborah, you can keep reading. What does the Midrash say about his name, Bil'am?
Bil'am bela im davar acher Bil'am
let's go with some commas over here. Okay? Number 1, Bil'am, belo am. He has no nation. Davar acher, Bil'am, shebala am. That he wore down the Jewish people through trying to curse them. Lastly, Ben Be'or, he's the son of Be'or, Sheba al Be'ir, who slept with his animal. Okay? The Midrash says, yes, Camille, the Midrash says that Bil'am slept with his animal. Which animal would he have slept with?
Donkey?
Yep, the female donkey, the aton. The Midrash, and I know where, by the way, the reason why I like teaching this is because it sounds strange, right? Why would you interpret that Bil'am sleeps with his aton? Think about it. The Midrash will do anything here to poke fun at Bil'am. What happened in the story of Bil'am and his donkey? Who looked more superior in the story of Bil'am and his donkey? Bil'am or his female donkey?
Donkey.
The donkey.
Right, his donkey. Look at the Gemara over here in Sanhedrin. Right? Here we go. I'll just open it up over here where it talks about this part, where it says that he slept with his donkey. Here, before we get there, let's read some other Midrashim, then we'll get there. Amar Rabbi Yohanan, Bil'am, Higer beraglo ahat haya. Bil'am was disabled in one of his legs. Shene'emar vayelech shefi. The Gemara explains the pasuk, vayelech shefi, which is in the Pisukim themselves. If we look at the Pisukim and we find this pasuk, vayelech shefi, and we look at the Perashat of this pasuk, vayelech shefi, right? We find a bit of a different explanation, right? We don't find it to mean that he went limping. The pasuk actually means, let me just bring it up in front of you, and he went off alone. But the Midrash explains vayelech shefi to mean that he went limping. Right? And they get that from this word shefi, from like Shimshon. They say Shimshon was limping in two of his legs. Shene'emar shefifon ale ora, hanoshech ikebesus. They explain it as limping. But I'd like to focus more for now a little bit on this next line. Bil'am suma be'ahat me'enav haya. He was blind in one of his eyes. Could someone explain to me why the Midrash would say he's blind in one of his eyes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why would he be such an integral part of society and a nation? Why would he be appointed to do such big things for his nation if he was so disabled?
Because you're asking a question of Perashat, and this is not the Perashat. He was not blind or limping. This is a Midrash. And what I said in the beginning still stands.
How does this Midrash make sense if...
The rabbis didn't mean it literally. The rabbis want you to... The point of the rabbis is you should be thinking something when you're reading this. What do you learn about Bil'am when you learn that he has a limp? Exactly what you just said. Either...
Not a perfect leader.
Either he wasn't perfect, or that they trusted him regardless because they really were desperate. What really gets to me, I think even more than that, is the next Midrash, that he was suma, that he was blind in one of his eyes, right? Where do we get this idea that Bil'am might be quote-unquote blind from?
Can't see the down.
So the Malach, he couldn't see the Malach.
Right? He couldn't see the Malach. Who said that?
Lori.
Hi, Lori, good. He couldn't see the Malach, right? And he gets into this exchange with the Malach, and then by Gal Adonai et Einei Bil'am, God uncovers his eyes. So in the Perashat, obviously he has two eyes. But in the Midrash, one of his eyes is blinded, right? You can imagine, just focus for a moment on thinking about Bil'am as only having one eye to see from. And it makes a lot of sense. If you were to draw a story of Bil'am with Midrashim, and he's limping and he has one eye, why would the child or the person might say, oh, that makes sense? Because it makes sense. Look at what kind of character he ended up becoming, or look what faults and things that he was missing, right? And on top of that, the Midrash adds insult to injury. This is a tough one. Chosem ba'amato haya. He used his private body part in order to communicate with God. Okay? More than that, the Gemara says, Ba'al atono haya. He slept with his donkey. Ketiv hacha kara shachav ka'ari, uchtiv hatam ben ragleha. Says the Gemara, when he was speaking back and forth with his female donkey, they were talking about this idea, right? It's a very strange idea, right? Would you ever understand that literally, girls? Would you ever understand literally that Bil'am was having relations with his female donkey? No, we would never understand that literally ever. But that's the point. That's why it's a midrash. It's a midrash because there's something deeper to it. The deeper part to it, let me just try to give my take on it. There can be two interpretations here. One is that he's as bad as an animal. Bil'am is as low as an animal, right? His animal was wiser than him. His relationship is not with human beings. His relationship is with an animal. That's who he gets involved with. Secondly, we could think about the following. We could think about the fact that this person who gets Bnei Yisrael to sin through improper actions with the woman, right, that Shelley mentioned before, he's the lowest form of human beings when it comes to that. He engages in worse than what Bnei Yisrael did. So the Midrash is saying that this animal that he was riding on, he was no greater than that. He was just as bad. Any questions on that? Dead silence. The Zoom silence is always very awkward because you can't tell if someone's listening, but then 2 seconds later, someone says something like, oh, they're listening.
If we were in Mishmara right now, it would be so loud.
Sarah's not here.
Oh.
Okay, now let's get to the last part, which I really want to pick your brains about. This is, I think, for me, probably one of the more well-known midrashim about Bil'am that some of you might know, most of you probably do not know. Have any of you ever heard about the 3 advisors of Paro?
Yeah, we learned this in middle school.
Great. According to the Midrash, it's actually brought down in Midrash Rabbah, but it's brought down in the Gemara. So it's a very ancient Midrash. It's a very ancient Midrash. It dates back to, the time of the Gemara. Maybe even earlier. And it says, De'amar Rabbi Hiya bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Simai, Shelosha hayu be'otah Esa. There were 3 people there giving advice to Paro. Eluhen, Bil'am, Iyov, ve'Yitro. There were 3 people giving advice to Paro in regards to Bnei Yisrael. Bil'am, Iyov, and Yitro. And you have to start scratching your head a little bit. These are the type of the Midrashim as well that Harambam wants you to realize that you can't understand this literally. You can't for a second think that Bil'am, Iyov, and Yitro were really the advisors of Paro. Rather, the Hachamim are trying to teach us some sort of message. Let's try to understand that message on the part of Bil'am for a moment. I'm not promising I'll have time to look at Iyov and Yitro tonight. But let's look at Bil'am. Bil'am shiya'atz neherag. Bil'am actually gave the advice to Paro to throw the babies into the Ye'or. Iyov sheshatak nidon b'yisurin. Iyov was silent and he was punished, as we know in the book of Iyov, with suffering. Yitro shebarach, Yitro runs away. Zachu b'nei banav lishe b'lishkat hagazit. He gets rewarded. So we have 3 personalities. Hold on for the question, Shelley, for a moment. We have 3 personalities. Personality number 1, he gives the actual advice, Bil'am. And he's killed. Personality number 2, Iyov. He's silent, but he's complicit. in the advice. And personality number 3 runs away. Shelly, question.
How is Eov any different from Yitro in this situation?
Yitro runs away from the advice. Eov sits there and allows Parot
to it. He physically runs away. That's like the definition of a coward.
No. He runs away because he doesn't want to be a part of it. That's why.
Why doesn't he just give the opposing view instead? If
So,
he has
number one is,
according to this Midrash, he has some kind of influence on Parah because he's one of the 3 advisors. So why doesn't he pitch in his advice to try to change it if he doesn't agree with it?
good. So it's very possible that it's just bringing up 3 extremes, right? One gives the advice, one's silent, and one leaves the advice. I don't know if when you're reading Midrashim, you need to question it so deeply, but I get the question. It's a very good question. Maybe Yitro felt like he couldn't say anything. Maybe Paro was not allowing it at that point, right? What I'd like to dwell on, yeah.
But isn't like staying silent and like running away kind of like, it's like both just not getting involved? Like, isn't that just the same?
So that's why Eov doesn't, in the end, Eov, he gets all of his stuff restored and God gives him everything back. Right? So Eov gets punished, but he doesn't get killed. What I like to focus on is Bilam. Girls, can you tell me what's going on here in this Midrash? Where does the Midrash, at least with Bilam, get the idea that he gave the advice?
Maybe it could be like from the fact that, like in the other Midrash, that he was kind of like worse than the animal, kind of like he would just, like he didn't care about like the baby, so he kind of like took action and it was just had the idea, like maybe it's trying to just show that, like trying to prove that point.
Okay. What's surprising is to me is that why is it Bilam indicated here, not Balaq? I want you to pay close attention here to the Pisukim that we read in Parashat Balaq. Look and focus here. Vayar Balaq ben Tzipor, he sees all that they do, the Emori. Vayagor Moab mipnei ha'am me'od ki rav hu. Vayakos Moab mipnei bnei Israel. Do any of you remember or can identify those phrases? Ki rav hu and vayakot and mipnei bnei Israel.
But I recognize all of them. I just can't remember from where.
Let's open up Sefer Shemot, Perek Aleph. Sefer Shemot, Perek Aleph. Vayomer El Amo, Paro tells his nation, Hine Am Bnei Yisrael Rav ve'asum mimenu. And it says over here, Ki Rav hu. They're Rav. And in Shemot it says that they're Rav. And it says in here, Vayakot Moab. They dreaded, or Bnei Yisrael were like thorns to them. It says in Shemot, Vayakutsu mipene Bnei Yisrael. Vayakos mipene Bnei Yisrael. Do you notice the similarity here in the language? Yes? How about this? What does Balaq tell Bilam? Ve'ata lechana arali et ha'am hazeh ki asum hu mimeni. And here we say, Rab ve'asum mimenu. And it says here, ki asum hu mimeni. What does the Midrash notice about the 2 stories then? Something deeper that the Midrash is telling us. Right? The Midrash is telling us something, I think, pretty deep over here.
Well,
I know about, yeah.
They're definitely like connected now. Like when it shows, like when you see them side by side, it's like.
But who's connected here? Who's the one that's saying all these things and saying that they're too large for me? And look, Ulai uchal nakebo va'agare shenu mina aretz. And remember, v'nilham banu ve'ala min haaretz. But who's the one speaking here? Who's the one asking for Bil'am to curse Bnei Israel?
Balaq.
Balaq. So why does the Midrash pick on Bil'am and not Balaq?
Maybe because Bil'am was like actually was going to go through with it.
Not maybe, that's exactly the point, Camille. Not maybe, that's exactly it. Who is the one that was going to go through with allowing it? Well, remember the Midrash, Bil'am's the one that went through with giving advice to Paro, and he's part of it, right? He's the personality that enables it to happen. He's the one that's always like the second to the king, but he's the one that's pushing it. I would say similar to our other Midrash that we read, similar to Haman, right? Right, I think Bil'am might be similar to Haman. But as you see over here, Bil'am, right, is the one that when he sees all this, he gives the advice of what to do with it, right? So what does Bil'am do in our story? He basically becomes the person to run the shots. Now there's something else very similar between the two stories. How many decrees were decreed against Am Yisrael in Parashat Shemot? Anyone know? How many different stages were there in the story of Shemot? Anybody? The slavery, the trying to kill the babies with the midwives, and the throwing the babies into the Yeor. How many different stages? 3. Where do we know that number from?
He tried to curse them 3 times.
He tries to curse them 3 times, right? There were 3 stages. There were 3 different times being done. I think the Midrash, when it's placing Bil'am in the story of Paro, sees that. It sees the connection between the two and says, Bil'am, who, by the way, listen carefully to what the Gemara said about his name. The first thing that Deborah Dabber read, right? What did the Midrash, what did the Gemara say about his name? Bil'am, Belo'am. Look at that. He's Belo'am. And what was the fear that Paro had? Hine, what was he fearful of?
That Bnei Israel would grow.
No, but what are the words that Paro uses? Hine. It's on your screen, girls.
Atum Rav atum mimenu.
What's the first word he uses after Hine?
Hine am Bnei Israel.
Am Bnei Yisrael. He's fearful of the Am. Who could negate the Am? Who could destroy the Am? The person who's Belo Am. The person who's Bil'am. I think that's why that would be the first comment on Bil'am in the Gemara, in the Talmud. He's Belo Am. He tries to attack the Am. And he has no Am of his own. So he has no problem with trying to hurt Am Yisrael. No problem whatsoever. And by the way, girls, with all these Midrashim about Bil'am, says the Gemara, look at this one. Amar le mar bered Rabbeina le bareh. Mar, the son of Rabbeina, says to his son, Bechulhu la tafesh the Midrash lebar mi Bil'am harasha. those who do not have a portion in the world to come, don't overly bring midrashim about them, right? Because when you say they have no portion in the world to come, en lo halak olam haba, you might try to find any reason why they don't go to olam haba. But with Bil'am, find any pasuk or phrase or word you could use and use a midrash on it against him. Fascinating. Fascinating that Mar, the son of Rabbeinu, would say to his son to do that. Do anything you want with the Pesukim, butcher them, chop them up, to make Midrashim against Bil'am. What did Bil'am do that was so bad? What did he do? How many Jews died because of him? How many Bnei Israel died because of him?
Thousands. It was the women thing that we were talking about. 24,000 Israelites died because of Bil'am. So the Gemara, which I'm welcome to share with you, so you could read the many other Midrashim about Bil'am. But here, for me, the most important to end with is him being part of the advice of Paro. That the Torah finds the similarity between Paro and his advisor Bil'am. Bil'am willingly says, yes, I'll do it. Now, was that so true? Didn't he say, I'm going to go ask God? Let me go ask God what's going on. The answer is no. He didn't really care what God thought. He was asking God, like when you ask a parent, can I go? No. Can I go? No. Can I go? Please, 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 please. Can I go? Can I go? Can I go? And the Midrash says that Bil'am kind of tired God out in a sense. Fine, go. Bil'am did not care about the rules, quote unquote. He was willing to say, even if you give me all the money in the world, I can't go against your word. And what did he end up trying to do? He tried to take all the money in the world. He was easily bought. That's the advisor of Paro. The danger that brings can be up to killing babies, throwing babies into the Nile, enslaving people, right? That's the Bil'am type of person. The Midrash teaches that this Bil'am en lo halak olam haba. The Mishnah says that he has no portion in the world to come. Look at this guy, this Navi that was great, blind in one eye, limping, right? Sleeps with his female donkey. They're poking fun at him, at this huge character of the Goyim, of the Navi, the Goyim. And what do we say about him? That because of him, the Goyim lost Navwa. Because they weren't worthy, because look what they do with Navwa. They turn it to try to hurt Am Yisrael. And so what happens is that just like with Paro, no success, the same thing with Bil'am, there's no success. Even though he finds a way to get them hurt, in the end, Bil'am ben Be'or harehu beharev. He ends up getting killed. So girls, thank you for joining tonight. I hope you can join as many classes as possible. We'll continue this next week.